Well, they're all important, first and foremost. But again, going into the bye, yeah, you want to build that momentum. It's an opportunity to do that is what it really is, to create some momentum as we go forward. And that's why it's important.
I don't know if the other guys asked you about this on Wednesday when you last spoke. How concerned would you be about the elevation and I guess guys dealing with that in general?
Well, supposedly, there's a study that tells you that the elevation really doesn't get into you until after 24 hours. We're trying to go on that science. Hopefully, that's what it is. So again, we'll have the oxygen on the sideline. We'll have all that stuff ready to roll.
Ron, when you're making, big roster decisions, whether it's looking for a franchise quarterback, or, maybe at the trade deadline, how involved do you keep Dan in some of those discussions?
What we do is we just inform the ownership of things that are going on and what's happening.
And so I guess, how frequent are those conversations, or what is that sort of communication like?
Well, when I need to communicate something, I'll just talk to Mrs. Snyder, or I'll talk to Mr. Snyder and just let them know what's happening and what we're doing.
This, and now it's been a few more weeks since he's been able to go. Is there any thought about even going back IR or anything like that?
No, because you put him on IR, you lose him for the rest of the year.
Okay.
And we're hoping that, given a little bit of time, work a little bit more of his conditioning, we'll be able to have him down the stretch. We'll have, after this week, I believe we'll have 8 games left to play, and we'll see what happens.
And then I know you've talked about how you have to adjust the practice schedule because of the injuries and all that. How do you also balance that with having to develop some of the young guys and making sure they get, I know, the mental stuff, but enough reps to develop those young guys? Is that a balance that you have to work there?
Well, they're still getting their reps. It's just that, we've limited the action periods we have in terms of, when we're hitting and when we're not hitting, stuff like that. But we're still getting the reps. We're still going through those plays. It's just that we've had to tone the tempo down a little bit so we can get them all in.
Ron, Derek Forrest, I think the clock started on him a couple of weeks ago. Where are things with him in terms of possibly coming off?
Yep.
Where are things with him? Is it?
Well, he's got one more week.
Okay, so it's still.
Yeah.
So we'll see where we are next week with him. And then just to go back to Curtis, I know we've asked a lot about this a lot. You've told us that he had a setback because he went on the COVID list, but that was like 3 months ago. This was first diagnosed 5 months ago. A month ago, we were told even 25 snaps seemed a bit aggressive, but you needed him in that game.
Well, what happened in that game was we had 2 other guys get hurt, and we had to play them a little bit more than we wanted to. And so, unfortunately, that set him back a little bit more. And because of that, we've had to be really careful because, as I said, with this stretch run coming after the bye, it's 9 games we have left, we'd like to have him for that. So we've kind of been trying to pace it and see how he's done each day. And each day we judge it, and each day we just feel that as we go forward, to take our time with him and be smart and get him back for the run.
So that Atlanta game, just too much work perhaps in that game.
Yeah, again, because of the situation and circumstances. We had to play him a few more snaps than we really wanted to, and unfortunately, we were wrong. It set him back.
And for Brandon Scherf, I think Sean said he was questionable. I lost track of the list. What are you seeing progress from him, and how is it important to get a guy like that possibly finally back on the field for everything he kind of represents for you guys?
Well, it's important to have all our guys back. You love to get Sam back as soon as possible. You love to get Logan back as quickly as possible, and you want to get Diami ready to roll and Curtis ready to roll. But unfortunately, you don't have it. So as we go through this with each guy individually, you want to see where they are. We think Brandon's very, very close, and we'll see how things are, and we'll see how he is later.
How has Curtis himself kind of handled this rehab? Where's his head at? I'd imagine he's frustrated and wants to get back out there.
Yeah, he's as frustrated as anybody. He does want to get back out there. He comes in and he takes the right approach in terms of going through the stuff that they're putting him through.
Some of the players this week have mentioned how they've noticed playing really good quarterbacks this year, the Rodgers, the Mahomes, how they have to be really more detail-oriented, disguise better. How have you noticed your defense handle those challenges compared to maybe some of the lesser quarterbacks you saw last year?
Well, I think they're starting to develop and understand exactly what it takes. I think we did, again, like I said, last couple of weeks, I thought we did some good things. Yeah, we had some opportunities. But again, like I said, it's about winning, and unfortunately we didn't get that done. But again, you continue to see optimism for some of the things that we've done, but not where we want to be, obviously.
Ron, how if at all is the trade? How if at all are you guys approaching the trade deadline any differently versus last year, where you guys didn't have the GM situation? This year, you guys have Martin and Marty. How if at all are you guys maybe looking at this a little bit differently, or anything along those lines?
Well, I wouldn't say we're looking at it any differently. We're just kind of talking about where we are, what we have, who we like, who we don't like, and your ears are open, and we'll see what happens once we get closer to the deadline.
I'm sorry, let me clean that one up a little bit. Like, for instance, like there's two different sets of eyes that you guys have versus last year. It was mostly just you kind of maybe assessing with the team and stuff like that. So if they see somebody, how is that approach any different, or like how would they convey to you, like maybe there's somebody we might be having interest in?
Well, I know this, meeting with Marty, Eric, and Chris, we meet weekly. We talk about where we are. We talk about what we feel like we need. We talk about players we feel we have to develop. And based off of that, I think as we get closer to the deadline, we'll see what happens.
Ron, throughout the offseason and training camp, you talked a lot about maturity and how guys would handle adversity. How do you think they've progressed in that area?
I think we obviously struggled early on, trying to understand and get certain concepts across to them. And part of it, again, is the maturity of how to handle those things. And unfortunately, it's been a learning process for us. And I think if you look at some of the things that have happened, being able to handle some adversity that we've had, I think we've kind of struggled with that. But I do think, again, based on the last couple of weeks, we've taken some steps, I think, in the right direction. We're not where we want to be, obviously, but we're going to continue to work towards it because, we want to win, and that's the bottom line.
And having anticipated there might be some maturity issues, is this team where you expected it would be at, 7-8 games in?
No. I thought we'd be a little bit better in terms of our record. I thought we had opportunities that we didn't capitalize on. And, those are all things that, again, are correctable. And those are things that we got to work on and correct. I mean, if we expect to win football games going down the stretch.
Oh, they're still growing. It's been interesting, especially with having Matt back. It's kind of a reshuffling of the deck. And, also not having Kerrigan here. So, they kind of had to reestablish the roles and just find their groove together. But they've been growing together well. We still have a lot of room for growth. If you look at a guy like Chase, this is Chase's second year, and people acknowledge him on the field, with chippers or double guys. So he's got to get used to that new role, which is different than when you're just a rookie and you're trying to learn the NFL. Well, now you got to learn the NFL as an elite rusher. So just a bunch of things kind of mixed in one bowl, and I think the guys are doing a good job and growing together, and we got a lot more room for growth, and I'm excited about it.
And before the year, you also talked about the importance of playing together. That's something that obviously we've heard as well, from Ron or other defensive coaches throughout, the year. I wonder what has made it so hard. I know they might be doing better now, but what made it so hard for them to actually play together, at least early on?
Well, I think when you have, the type of guys we have guys that can win one-on-ones. We have Chase and Tez. We've got John. We've got Payne, Tim and Matt. And, I always use a basketball term with those guys. When you have an elite scorer on a team, hey, he wants everybody to get out the way so he can do his thing, right? Well, for us, we have scorers, but we got to learn how to work together, and it actually make life way easier on us when we do work together. So they've been growing into that role of, hey, we don't have to do it on your own. We can work together. Hey, make sure your teammate's covering for you, you're covering for him. Or, hey, you're in a great rush, but another teammate has one. Now let's cover him up. So it's just a matter of basically working off of each other. That also counts and constitutes as working together, working off of each other and just getting used to playing with each other. And like I said, when you take Ryan Kerrigan out of the mix, when you add Matt back into the mix, they've got to get used to one another still. This is still a young group,
What was working well for that front four last year that is maybe different, missing, whatever this year that you're still working through?
So each year kind of takes on its own life. And last year, people knew the names, but they didn't really acknowledge what was going on yet. I think after a full year of studying this group, I think they realized, hey, we got to keep chippers in. We got to keep extra blockers in. We got to maybe not drop back and try to throw a 20-yard dig. We got to go screens or quick game. So I think it's people change, and now we've got to adapt to, hey, you're being acknowledged as good rushers, which is different than when you just roll a group out there and they say, well, we'll deal with whatever you guys bring. They don't do that to our group, and rightfully so. So we've just got to get accustomed to it and get used to it, as all premier rushers in this league do. You get used to it being hard.
For young guys especially, like Chase, Montez, is that difficult to learn to adapt to that? And what sort of growth do you want to see in those two especially?
No, it's not difficult. I mean, the first thing is you got to acknowledge that it's happening. You know, if you acknowledge that, hey, you're not sneaking up on anybody anymore, Montez. Everybody sees how long you are. They see how gifted you are. They're going to account for you, right? So once we acknowledge that and we understand that, it's easier going forward. And I think this group, being as young as they are, they're starting to understand that.
Sam, you guys, some of those guys were getting chipped and double teamed at times last year too. So what's the difference? Is it more this year? Are they attacking them in different ways to kind of slow them a little bit?
Oh, it's definitely a bigger emphasis this year, and we're fine with it. I mean, if you keep guys in to chip us, that makes the back seven's life easier, you know. And part of that's on us as coaches and putting them in positions to be successful. But you also see game plans just changing as far as the screens and the movement passes. And, hey, maybe we get a 3rd and 12, and last year we got a team that just dropped back and go for it. And this year, hey, we're going to get a draw or a screen because they don't want to deal with that. So it's just situational things, and that's why I've always lived by, I don't measure the success of our pass rush off of the sack numbers. It's measured off of, do we affect the quarterback in the game plan? So that's what I'm looking for from our group, affecting the game plan, not necessarily the numbers. The numbers will come.
And with Chase, just as a pass rusher, how have you seen him progress? At one point, early in there, Ron talked about the stutter steps, and he kind of seems like he's gotten rid of that a little bit. So how have you seen him progress?
So the game is faster here. The quarterbacks get rid of the ball quicker. The offensive linemen get in their sets quicker, right? So Chase, yes, had to get out of the stutter step. He's doing a great job right now. Bigger steps running towards the quarterback. The other thing Chase has done tremendously has been communication. Communication with his tackle, communication with Montez on the other side of seeing what sets we're getting, seeing what's coming. I call it playing ahead of the curve. He's been doing a great job with that, and that's part of his growth to the next level. And that's what premier rushers do.
Way to maybe, have you ever given thought to moving him around even more to get him some other looks, whether, you know, I know he likes to stand up, goes right, left, even some other areas that you could create rushes for those guys, whether he or Montez, maybe with one-on-ones inside, something like that.
Yeah, so we move them around some, stand them up, put them down. I mean, we do move them around, stand them up, put them inside some. You know, it just kind of, it's dictated off of the game, too. It's dictated off of, hey, you see some teams doing, you know, some exotic things when they have a lead or they know you're passing, right? So it's just kind of the flow of the game, what's happening with the game. Obviously, if we get up in a game and we get the obvious pass situations, we can get more exotic. But if we're playing gritty football and, you know, it's just kind of, we got to deal with how the game is being presented to us.
Sam, you mentioned the absence of Ryan Kerrigan and having to replace that. How do you kind of feel that's gone, particularly in the pass rush? I know sacks aren't everything, but you guys don't really have, coming off the bench at least, those kinds of sacks off the edge. So how do you kind of view that you guys have been able to replace him so far?
Well, as a coach, you always miss a guy who has that much experience rushing the passer. And Ryan Kerrigan is an excellent pass rusher, very, very efficient. And I actually still use clips of Ryan Kerrigan with his efficiency of rushing the quarterback. But that's a decision that the organization wanted to make. We wanted to go with some more youth. And, you know, the youth will pay off. It doesn't always pay off the next day, but it pays off in the future. You know, I always have a feeling of, hey, you get rid of a guy a year too early, the fans are mad, right? But it's probably the right thing for you to do with your organization. You get rid of them a year too late, probably, you know, you're too late. So I think as an organization, we had to make that transition. And, you know, you're going to have youth guys in there, but ultimately I think we're going to grow from it.
And on Green Bay's first touchdown last week, Chase Young dropped back to pass on that play. And I know there have been some times where that happens. It seems like the kind of thing from the outside, like, wait, why would have Chase Young drop back? Why not just have him constantly in pursuit of the quarterback on a pass play? I guess what goes into that thought, and how do you see him as a guy that could potentially help you in that way?
So when we're talking about that specific call, it's not a Chase Young thing. That's the position. Chase just happened to be in that position. You know, it could have been another guy in the game. It could have been on the opposite side of the field. He just happened to be in that position in our defense at that moment. That's what we chose to go with. And we feel confident if we would have operated the call the way it's supposed to be, not a big deal at all. We're off the field.
Excuse my ignorance, Dan, but like knowing that it is Chase Young specifically, does that not factor? Like, wait, why are we making this call with this guy, or is that?
Well, no, we have confidence in all of our guys. I mean, like I said, it could have been the other way. It could have been Montez Sweat dropping, and they're both premier pass rushers. And it could have been Casey Toohill in the game. It doesn't matter kind of who's in the game with that. It's the plan we want to attack the offense with, And again, it's not on Chase dropping. It's on all of us operating. And if all of us would have operated, we would have been good.
I know John asked you about Chase's growth overall, but in terms of his specific pass rushing toolbox, that's how Del Rio likes to refer to it, where do you think he is in that in developing various moves, and what does he need to maybe add to it still?
The most exciting thing for me with Chase and his pass rush is his efficiency. He's leaning towards the Kerrigan efficiency because he understands his game is sped up now. It's not college where you get a bunch of steps and a move and then I'll go chase the quarterback. No, the ball's gone in this league. So I really like the efficiency and the understanding of what's going on out there. Nothing is a surprise to him anymore. Okay? So when he's coming off that edge, he understands exactly where he's got to get to and the timing he's got to get there. And that's the growth from last year. Last year, there was a couple times where you could see it get a little fuzzy and hazy to him because it was brand new to him and it was going fast. You can tell the game has slowed down to him now.
And what about just John Allen, Deron Payne? We talk about the edge rushers so much, but what are those two doing on the interior that you like?
John is having an excellent season. John is he's one of our captains and he's one of our leaders. And John's presence in the run game, first and foremost, has been outstanding. And then his pass rush, John is relentless. John is relentless and John is reliable. And that is huge, And Big Payne's in there. Big Payne is a big cleanup guy. He likes moving around. His athleticism, loves running games with guys. So I'm very, very pleased. And then when you add Matt to that mix, I'm very, very pleased with our tackle play.
Sam, you mentioned Ryan Kerrigan Kerrigan's absence being one of the major factors here in some of the defensive line play, but you also mentioned that Matt Ioannidis coming back was another factor in how things have changed. Just how has he changed the defensive line exactly? You guys had Tim Settle as your third interior guy, but how have things changed with his inclusion back?
Well, as a coach, it's a comfort level for me. If John or Big Payne need a break, it's a comfort level. I got no issue with Matt going in the game, man. I'm afforded 3 starters at tackle right there. So that's outstanding. And then, obviously when Matt comes back, people get bumped down. That means Tim Settle is now our 4th, right? Well, I am very happy with Tim Settle being our 4th because there's not going to be many 4ths in this league better than Tim Settle. So he allows us the depth and the security of, hey, we got another starter on the field. He's outstanding at communicating games and understanding game plans. So it's really comforting having Matt Ioannidis back.
Against the Saints, the Chiefs, and the Packers, you guys seem to have so much success on the defensive line, especially in the first half, some of the sacks, some of the turnovers that were created. Why do you think against some of the better competition you guys really started to come alive there? What were you seeing exactly there?
It's a funny question. As we review, because we always go back and review on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I said, man, I never would have guessed we'd have our best rushing days against Kansas City and Green Bay, given who they have at quarterback and how quick they get rid of the ball, how much they move around. But I think our guys just took ownership, to be honest with you. I think they put their foot down, took ownership, and decided they're going to work together. They're not going to try to go individually and get it done for us. And there's nothing selfish about it. They were trying to do it for their team, but they decided we can go further together. We can go fast by ourselves, but we can go further together. And I think the light came on for those guys. And remember, we have good leadership in there with Matt and John who have been around for a while. So it's finally coming together and clicking.
Just the last thing for me. You've talked about how last year teams are kind of we see the guys, we'll just let them do what they do, and that was a lot. This year, they're okay, we'll bring in extra protectors, we'll chippers, whatever have you. What is the chess match that you guys make to counteract that, to ensure some of the success that you guys had last season, or just some of the success you've seen in these recent games?
So the chess match becomes, hey, if you want to keep a guy in, maybe we bring an extra guy. Extra guys, plural. The chess match is, hey, we're going to move guys around. We're going to switch sides, You might be surprised when you get lined up where you see guys. And then the other chess match is we're just going to outwork you. And I think you've seen that in the last couple of weeks against Kansas City and Green Bay. The guys just making that extra little effort of, hey, the play is not over. I got to overlap my teammate. The play is not over. I got to help my guy. And I just think it's been a group effort altogether, along with the coaching staff of putting guys in the right position to win.
When your unit has expectations but starts a little slower than you hope, how did you change or grow as a coach to try to get them where they needed to be?
The first thing I believe in is, first we got to analyze what we're doing as far as are we doing what we set out to do. So a lot of that has to do with reteaching. I always tell guys, we're not going to make stuff up. We're going to reteach it and get it right. That was the first step. So me as a coach, I got to reteach it, teach it better, make sure the understanding is there. And then as a players, I think they understand the buy-in. The buy-in. We got to have all hands on deck and be working towards one goal. There can be no selfishness, no singular goal. It's one goal, and that's to win. So as the outside world, we control the narrative in our building, in our team. As the outside world may look at it as, oh, you guys didn't do this or you didn't do that. No. What was the goal we set out to get done, and did we accomplish that? So keeping the focus on what we're trying to get done and not what the outside narrative is. That's one of the biggest things.